conversation. It's the conversation. Y'all ready? Y'all ready? Let's go. Let's go. No filter, no restrictions. You about to give my opinion in its purest form. So my words, don't try to spin them. What I said is what I said, and what I said I meant it. The gloves are off now when I'm coming out swinging. So engage in verbal combat, but you better be ready. Cause this here for me is light work, even if the topic's heavy. I'm ready for it all with no running from nothing. You just take the time to digest what I put in, no rushing. But time is moving, don't waste it. You want the real, come and face it. Come sit and talk to me if you want it straight without a chaser. And it might burn a little when you step on up to taste it, but it's nothing harsh, I promise. Just a little conversation.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the conversation with Harold and Dave. We have some unique guests with us on today. You already see Cello down there from the Cello Show, Understanding Your Purpose in Life. Great motivational show. You can check him out by going on YouTube, TikTok, or Instagram on Keone Productions and seeing he has a scheduled show coming up there. Today's topic: immigration, 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 and once again, immigration. We also have Von Page here with us today, joining in with our talk, costume designer in Los Angeles, very, very good friend of mine. And the first thing I want to start with is immigration. To some people, once they hear the word immigration, it is a scary word. Why? Harold.
Well, I mean, recently it's been politicized to the point to where they're pulling from, and I forget the French author that talks about replacement theory. So if we keep people believing that these people are to be feared, it becomes amplified in a negative light, which has caused a lot of the ruckus and the level of discomfort within our discourse. And rather than trying to seek a solution to the problem, which again, we have laws that deal with immigration. So much of the complaint, rather than them hold the law, the those that are elected officials to account to pass laws to address this issue and hopefully eliminate the current challenge that we do have. We've just chose to let's go back through the media and really hit these people who are seeking a better life for themselves and their families. Hit these people over the head with shovels as opposed to trying to deal with those who are responsible for allowing it to get to where it is. So I will land my plane there.
Okay, now you're going to have a three land your plane maximums on the show. Okay, you can't land the plane after every comment. All right.
It's
Cello.
called a catchphrase.
Oh, thank you.
All
Okay.
superheroes have them. Harold can have one.
Okay. All right. All right. Dave's on one today because okay, so everybody, Dave's going to be ornery today because he's old and he doesn't know how to put his do not disturb on when he was recording
Oh,
his
wow.
TikToks. So he was recording a TikTok. He was almost done and I called him. So he's a little ornery today. But he'll figure that out, that do not disturb button. Cello is a legal immigrant. And Cello, I want, and for you specifically, give just a tiny bit of your background so they can know where the conversation is coming from you today, and then tell us why you think immigration is a scary word to some.
Originally to do a fellowship. I'm a physician and surgeon. So originally I came to the country to do a fellowship in colorectal surgery. And we had our first daughter here, my wife and I. And then we went back to Argentina. We decided to reestablish here in the United States for the opportunities that we saw for our future. Um, the whole time I was within the legal situation. So, I stayed here the 6 months like a tourist, but we were offered potential opportunities. Now, this was the time 1997 to 2005. That was the time that it took me to get the green card. Back in the day, the internet was not a thing. So every time we needed to ask a question to immigration, we were in South Florida. So I remember one time going there at 4 in the morning to be in line, and by 3 p.m. they were closing the offices. So I was about, 10 feet from the counter, and they said, okay, you got to come back tomorrow. And then the other thing was that every time I wanted to know about my status of my case, I had to call in and be on the phone like 3 hours. And then, anyway, that long story short, we it took us 8 years to get our green card, and then we became American citizens. So that's basically my background, and why immigration is scary. I think it has to do the link with the current situation, like Harold said, the politicization of it, and it has a lot to do with illegal immigration. I don't think legal immigration is a huge deal. However, the country has had, like multiple administrations kind of pushing it forward. The issue of having to those illegal immigrants that being in the country contributing and doing a good job and being good kind of citizens, that amnesty or kind of cleaning them up to stop being illegal to being legal. And I think that's it. That's why it's making the issue a lot more complex than it used to be.
Thank you, Cello. Vaughn grew up in Miami, Florida as well. So when people hear immigration a lot, they think Texas, they think California, New York. Being from Miami, we know about immigration and dealing with that from an early age, dealing with Cuba being so close, as well as Haiti. So Vaughn, tell me why you think immigration is a scary word to some people when they just hear that word.
I think that right now it's just the political climate. Everybody's on with what they're reading, what they're seeing, questioning whether they should believe what they're seeing and hearing. And I think that our government has found a way to politicize immigration in a way that we obviously should not, because we are a country of immigration. I'm probably the least qualified on this panel to talk about it. I don't know a lot about immigration laws. I am an American citizen. I never had to think about immigration much until my adolescence when I think the Cuban crisis was going on at the time. But I think hardcore American people super proud to be in America, be born in America, all that, which is wonderful, right? But let's not forget what our country was founded on. Our country was founded on immigrants. Like immigrants essentially built this country without any recognition. And so I think for those hardcore Americans that are super proud and throwing up the American flag as they should, they hear about people from other countries getting closer to the borders. They hear about, both sides, left and right. Um,
Oh, Vaughn froze. I'm going to go to Dave. Dave.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because in all, a lot everything that has been said here is interesting. I think there are two, just from the political science side of these things, two factoids here. One is amongst the right wing populace, whether it be in the United States, and before it predates Trump, from the very origins of the Tea Party, illegal immigration was a motivating factor. It's something that drives there, and also in Europe, right? That is a lot. That is a lot of the motivation behind Brexit, and so you've had this feeling amongst people who we know are voting on these things because of cultural issues, right? From the research, we know that a lot of that supports there. So the cultural impact of having large numbers of others, right? People who don't look like you and don't have your heritage coming into your country is vexum and has been weaponized, or the term is securitization. It's been securitized. They've by populist right wing candidates all in Europe and the United States. So it's kind of ubiquitous as an issue because it comes to the second point. It's also ubiquitous as a problem, and we had one. The legal experience is very different from the illegal experience, and you have the factoid I throw out here, Danny Roderick, who's an economist, he asks his students, he says, who do you think's better off? The richest, is it better to be rich in a poor country or poor in a rich country? And he said, if you take that down to being in the bottom 5% of a really underdeveloped country or really, really hard hit country and being in the 5%, not the 1%, being in the top 5% of the poor country versus the bottom 5% of the rich country. And he says when you look at the statistics, there's no comparison. People in developed nations, the poor people in developed nations are much better off than fairly wealthy people in underdeveloped nations, right? And that is where, and then you throw in a societal collapse that only exacerbates it. So the point is, there is this enormous push and pull on whatever system, whatever country we're talking about, right? Where people they've got a better chance. They know they've got a better chance in Europe, in the United States, than they do in the countries they're coming from. And that creates a ubiquitous problem with a ubiquitous political response that has made it scary. That's the point. It's supposed to be scary in the political discourse. It creates a situation where you feel that this is a existential threat to some important value in the society that needs to be corrected, perhaps by extraordinary means, because that's what happens when you securitize something. So that's the egghead point of view.
That's the egghead point of view. What are the real problem implications for you when illegal immigrants are allowed to be in the country? And it can come from you from a contribution standpoint, the things that are not counted. Like, what to you specifically is the biggest issue and concern with the legal immigration? I'll go to Cello first.
So, first of all, I wanted to add scary is when things are out of control, no matter what that is. And that is applied to the current situation with illegal immigration.
What was your question again?
Me? No, it wasn't a question.
Oh,
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. It's
No.
a little low. I can hear you now. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, sorry about that. No, I was also adding that to me, scary, and it applies to immigration as well as other topics, is when it's out of control. And I think what's making it scarier these days is because it's obviously out of control. Whatever the outcome is wanted, whatever the motivation to do it, it is, but it is not done in control. It's out of control. That's one thing. But going to your question, I believe the problem with illegal starts with the word illegal. So it's not done within the law. So the main idea, the main purpose that I had when I decided to come to this country is because of a country of opportunities. And actually, it's interesting how all as immigrants may not be as disciplined in our original countries, but when we come here, we follow the discipline. That's one of the main reasons, besides the opportunities, that I wanted to be in this country. And the fact that doing it illegally, just because, yeah, all those opportunities, I
Ron,
think
when I come to you, I'm
that's
going
the
to go to
main
Harold and
problem.
Dave, and then I'm going to come to you, and I'm going to have you ask an immigration
Okay.
question that's burning in your mind.
Okay.
Thank you, Cello.
Yes.
Harold, what's the burning issue with you with the legal immigration?
Well, I think Cello kind of hit on it. It's the term illegal. Because when we look at what's being presented, it's basically using a broad brush to paint everybody who's coming across the border as illegal for the most part. And generally, those, and I stand to be corrected if I'm wrong, but the majority of people that are here illegally overstayed their visas or may have not crossed at a legitimate port of entry. However, even then, you can't apply for, and again, I stand to be corrected if necessary, but my understanding is in order to apply for asylum, you have to apply in the United States. Now, I was told there may be other processes, but that was my understanding. So if I'm undocumented, meaning not documented based upon the United States, i.e., giving me official, national documents here, i.e., whether it's an official ID or a social security number, etc., that's one thing. But I think when we describe someone as illegal, even though they may not have even broken the law, because when I hear numbers like 10 million have crossed the border, and okay, are all 10 million illegal? But that's the picture that's being painted, and it's dangerous because now you're passing laws that are allowing law enforcement to now request proof of citizenship from individuals, or proof, some level of proof, which is dangerous, and then it's weaponizing what is outlined in our Constitution as far as our immigration policies are concerned, what's outlined as far as our laws are concerned, to be misused or abused by those who are now a part of this whole political apparatus that's being created to target these individuals. And so that's where, I'm concerned at how it's being done and what's being done. And prayerfully moving forward, we'll get some reasonable responses from people of sound mind in elected office that may be able to help us put the fix in place. Because again, we're still dealing with issues with DACA. We're still dealing with a number of issues to our immigration system that need to be fixed, repaired, and in some instances, blown up and replaced. But
Well, you said something there that sounds dangerous. It sounds awfully close to when a certain people used to always have to produce papers to show that they were free. One of the things, and you talked about asking for documentation, that bothers me with illegal immigration is only a certain sect of people are asked. I've had friends that are from other countries, and they always laughed because they're like, they never asked me for my papers, and I'm from Ireland and I've been here for 4 years illegally, but I don't look the part, so they're not going to ask me for papers
Right.
when I get pulled over. That's the part that's always scary to me. I don't want to go deep into that. I know everybody knows what I mean. Let's go to Dave. What's the burning issue with you for immigration? Because I remember when we were talking about Social Security and taxes, you did bring up is if you're working illegally in this country, you're not contributing into Social Security. So I know that's one of them.
Well, actually, you may well be. Most undocumented people, unless they are working under the table for cash, undocumented folks frequently have fake Social Security numbers, at which point that means they're having their money withheld, their employer's making the contribution, and it's going, and they'll never get a benefit from it, right? And so I look at this and I say the biggest problem we have is that the legal system is not really great, right? The legal system works for two groups of people. It works for skilled people like our friend here, right? That there are, but it doesn't work well, right? It certainly doesn't work well. But yeah, a doctor, a really well-skilled doctor. Yeah, I like that. Let's get that guy in here.
It also works great for if you have Major League Baseball skill level.
Right. And the other category it works for is people who marry, right? And the statistics on it is about half the people who come into the country come in through some connection. And so there's a lot of that because those are the two things that the system works on. And at the same time, guys like me and Harold, we are approaching our expiration date. We are in the baby boom. And, we're going to retire. We're going to die. Okay. But we're retiring and we're going to be on Social Security. And the baby boom was a thing, right? And when I was in college, when I was in high school, though, I could see looking behind me at the classes, there were less people. I could see looking behind me and classes. We got a feedback going on there. But the thing is that what my thing about Social Security is when you let someone into the country, when you let immigration in, you're solving the problem that China, Russia, A lot of European countries have a declining population, right? Japan, right? This idea that we've controlled the birth rate in a lot of industrialized countries, and you have collapsing populations. We're gonna have a little. We don't have as much of a problem, but we've got something no one else has. We got people that want to come in, and so from my mind, the legal immigration is undervalued. Right? It's not understood that, hey, look, Social Security is a pyramid scheme. It works if you can force people into it and you have a pyramid, which requires you to have a growing population. So there's a really very strong argument that you need to control your immigration rate, that having people that want to come into your country is a really great thing, but we don't have a rational policy because, Bush W, he wanted to fix it. A lot of people have wanted to fix legal immigration, but they constantly run into the barrier of, we won't fix legal immigration till we fix the illegal, and they haven't been able to do it. And so we have a real mess that is, to my mind, that's the threat, is not solving one of our biggest demographic, political, economic problems.
To your point, Dave, is that if you have those undocumented, because now it's not so politically correct to say illegal, but undocumented, actually with fake IDs, so actually providing to Social Security, but if you keep them undocumented, they're not going to be able to collect what they,
Yep.
so that is, in my mind, a reason why this issue hasn't been solved administration after administration after administration.
I thought you were going to sort of stop.
And also
No, I mean, they haven't solved it, right? We have
think
kicked
we're
this.
in agreement.
Yeah, we've kicked this down. We've kicked the can down the curb for a long time. And like I say, it's George W. Bush that wanted to fix the legal immigration side of things.
It was this close to
act
on it.
Yeah. And they ran headlong into the concerns about illegal immigration, and all of that had just mushroomed with the Tea Party, with MAGA, with Trump, because Trump has. He said it's not politically correct to say illegal immigrant. Well, Trump don't care. He went there. They're rapists and murderers, right? I mean, that's from the day he came down the escalator, and that is the story, right? Say her name. Whose name?
Is he completely wrong?
No, I'm just saying this is what he did, and he doesn't do it alone, right? The ground was fertile for it. But politically, we've moved in a direction where it is actually, I would argue, on the right, politically correct to call it illegal immigration. Yes. And it is part of that managing threat. And, you yell at Biden during the State of the Union, say her name about the woman who was killed by what they would say is an illegal immigrant, right? And because they like the term illegal in there. And I'm old school. I say undocumented.
Yeah. Not to mention the amount of people killed by citizens in legal. The problem is the statistically skewed. How many illegal immigrants are committing crimes compared to how many illegal immigrants aren't? So, if it was 5%, if 5,000 illegal immigrants come in the country and 3 commit a crime, it's going to be painted that, look what the illegal immigrants are doing. We've seen it with everything. If you are of a different ethnicity, if you've seen that, how your ethnicity can be painted as a portrait because a small percentage of that group does something. That we do it with genders, we do it with age, we do it with ethnicity. So why would it stop at immigrants? Why would it? It wouldn't. So the thing is, he wasn't wrong. Yes, there are rapists and killers and criminals and people from other countries who do things and flee the country. But to say it with a sweeping generalization that all these illegal immigrants are coming in the countries and they're rapists and killers and murderers is doing a disservice, and it's not true. That's the problem I always had with that statement.
Right.
When
But
people ask me, aren't you scared of, I'm scared of people who already live here more than I'm scared of illegal immigrants. Illegal immigrants don't bomb Oklahoma City. They don't bomb the Boston Marathon. They don't, you
Oh,
know, go ahead, Dave.
I gotta. Do you remember Welcome Back, Connor? Harold remembers. Harold's old, right? Or Shaq.
Yeah.
Wait,
Oh,
wait, wait,
oh,
wait, wait,
oh!
wait, Dave. Before you finish,
Wow.
Cello's on here today. You can't keep saying Harold's old and not adding Cello into the group. Okay, that's just doing a disservice.
Joe, hang on here. How old is God? What? He now gets
But
good rates on his car insurance. That guy's not old. I'm
yeah,
not seeing that as old.
I'm
he,
58.
You're
he's
58, dude.
Yes,
You look
sir.
listen,
better than me. All
older
right.
than
Uh,
me. That's older than me. I'm not a
Right.
boomer. I told you.
all right.
I'm sorry, but
Yeah,
It's
here's
the
the
yeah.
thing.
Anyway,
beard.
I
It's
But
the
but
my
beard,
still
thing
got
Harold.
my
about all right, the fear
still got my
factor,
finger.
Mhm.
right? This is something. My personal reaction to this is, I just will go by. I'll go into the Kangaroo, and I remember one day in particular. It was the summer. I was going to a Kangaroo, and you had the landscaping crew that was going out, and you know, they could very well be documented. I don't know. They could have been born here for all I know. But come on, right? This is the kind of folks that I think people would look at and question whether or not they're documented. And these guys, and in fact, this is where a lot of these guys work. I see a drive by in New Jersey past the guys at Home Depot who are standing out in the cold, waiting to try to get a job. And I am always reminded of. I just had this flash of Joshua Chamberlain when in the Civil War, when he was accepting the surrender of the Confederate army. And he looks and he says, everyone, the deserters are gone. These are the guys that stuck it out to the end. And he, in his head, he explaining, he said, was not such manhood to be welcomed back into the Union, so tested and assured. And so he brought the Union Army, to present arms. And now I don't want to salute Confederates necessarily, but when I'm walking past these guys, I'm just thinking they're going. These guys are going out to work on a hella hot day, and they are doing what the American dream or the ethics are. And I just said, is not such manhood to be welcomed into the Union. And I said they're better. We're going to do more work than me today. And that's my personal feeling is I don't get scared by these guys. However, they are scary to some people because they're others. They look different. They talk a different language. And so there is that. But I had to give the Joshua Chamberlain thing.
Well, no, that part that you do say, because we've been through this in this country, because someone's always taking our jobs. At one point it was the Negroes are taking our jobs, but every time we get into this taking our job scenario, a lot of the jobs are jobs that people don't want to do anymore anyway. I am Americanized. I am not standing out in 20 degrees in front of Home Depot hoping to get a roofing job. That's just, I'm not doing that. So who's doing it? So everybody's points are great, and I get it, and it's good because it's pointing out how people think and answer these questions. Uh, what is, if we could say, I don't know if it's a positive. Well, okay, what's the beauty in people being able to get in this country? It's such a hard thing to say illegally because you can't stop it. There's no way to stop it 100%. It happens. So I don't know if there's a positive on it. I don't know if it's the way we talk about it to where, when we're catching them, what are we doing? Harold pointed out earlier, you can't request asylum if you're not in the country.
Right. But I think the way the question makes more sense, even more sense, is they're coming illegally because they have no other alternative. And
Other means. Okay.
the root cause is where they're coming from. So normally we put all the weight on, the United States being the country that it is, and how do we stop these people coming in to actually achieve the American dream? Whereas the problem is why aren't they trying to stay where they're from? And the governments where they're from are in a way benefited. Mexico, for example, is benefited by, instead of having to solve their problems, oh, a lot of the population is leaving, so we have less issues to solve. That is a big problem. But going and then I'll let the others talk. But going back to the issue on what Trump said and and Biden or whoever else says, it's not that we have to stop immigration. What we have to do is control, who is getting in and who cannot get in. In other words, the way I look at immigration, do you have in your house, do you have doors? I'm not even saying that if you lock them or not. Do you have doors? If you do, there's a reason for that, because you want to, before you let somebody in, you want to know who are you letting in, and that starts with the way they look. Then if you know them or not, what do they do? So you start doing some kind of control, and then you let them in or not to your house. This should be the
Well,
same
you know what,
issue.
they kind of do, not to the greatest extent, of course, but they kind of do that. That's how sometimes we catch people with certain skills when when they're at the compounds and they're asking, "Where are you from? What did you do?" What, and they hear baseball player, doctor, lawyer, and then they start weeding these people, out of line sometimes. Vaughn said, because he's traveling, so he has some technical difficulties. He's commenting on what we said earlier. He said, one thing that burns me is protecting American tax dollars in relation to immigration reform. Trump made it PC to demean immigrants. We went over that, whether it was on purpose or by accident, sweeping generalizations. The beauty is anyone can come here to make an entire new life and be successful. And I think no one on the panel, even Cello or anyone, is disputing that we don't want to not let people have the ability to come over and accomplish the dreams that they want, like we've been sold since we were kids. It's just the fact that we may never get there, but we're wanting everybody to be able to do it legally. But like Dave said, we haven't fixed the legal process yet.
And they won't.
Cello just said it took him 8 years. It took my wife 3.5. I'm 5, and that was agonizing. So I had 3 years on top of that, and we kept getting setback after setback, and it was really, really annoying. So, yeah,
and that was your wife.
yeah, we were married. Yeah,
Well, there
and
you
I'm
go. I
already- and I'm
forgot about
already-
that. Yeah,
so
that's
Cello-
the other.
yeah,
Like you say,
Cello-
that's the other route.
right. Cello and his wife weren't legal, and they came. It took them 8 years, and luckily, it almost took us more than 5, and we almost caught him, and I'm legal. So,
But let me add to that part, because Dave said, skilled people,
Mhm.
who would contribute. But when we were skilled based on degrees and everything, that all
Mhm.
our efforts, but we needed to start as scratch, and we
Yeah.
had to compete with people from here. And I wouldn't say we were discriminated, but if there were one position, and let's say 5 people, me and 4 other American citizens, first the whole opportunity was going to be given. In other words, I had to prove that I was better than them in order to get. So it wasn't a done deal that, oh, he's a
No,
physician, let him
Yeah.
in. No, I had
Yeah.
to start from scratch and go my ladder
but
up.
You did have to start from scratch and go your ladder. Cello, you also won't say it because you're a super positive and awesome person. You've been here 27 years. I'm going to tell you, you're discriminated. But we're going to I'm just going to tell you.
well, it's not easy when you go that route. But
No.
the thing is, there's a bimodal distribution, right? Which means there's 2 peaks with a valley in between it, right? So I could make a heart, right? Okay, or we could call it something else. Anyway, the point is, in immigration, we get lots of people like Cello with advanced degrees
Mhm.
and skills. It's not easy, but when you look at who gets in, there is a legal pathway for those folks to get in. Um, we get there are guest worker programs for lower skilled, and then of course the undocumented pathways for the low skilled folks. And what's missing in our immigration inflow are people in the middle with, bachelor's degrees and, not necessarily better qualified for any particular job, but still skilled. And those folks are pretty much, you got to have, if you're one of them, you're going to have to marry into the country. And again, those are the kinds of workers we're going to need more and more as the baby boomers are almost done, right? We're almost done retiring. The baby boom, I'm at the end of the baby boom. I'm 60, so in 7 years, all baby boomers will hit their full retirement Social Security date. Whether they retire, it's up to them. But and so the need to grow the workforce is there, and at this point, it's almost too late to fix, right? But this is something that, like I say, Bush was trying to fix, and hasn't been. So
to comment on the, I mentioned discrimination with Cello earlier. Harold grew up and he's from Miami, still lives there like me. We've actually witnessed, because it happens both ways. We've seen it on the other side. And Harold, I know what you're talking about. We've seen people that come from Cuba. Miami's a heavily populated community, Cuban community. And we've seen some people that had to start from scratch, but they've gotten a position over someone who's already lived in America, born and raised in America, and have those credentials already. So it can happen both ways. And that's some of the upsetment with Miami residents when those type of things happen.
But there's a slight difference when we're looking at the Cuban population and what happened here. And there's a big piece that's not talked about much at all, if at all. And that's the Cuban Adjustment Act that was passed by Congress back in the 60s, which allowed, then later on, you had the Wet Foot, Dry Foot Act that allowed a Cuban to come here. And if they touched the ground on U.S. soil, they couldn't be deported. So you had a lot of unfair advantages that were given to that community that other communities did not receive or gain benefit of. But also looking at how things are being laser focused on the southern border. But last time I checked, the United States has two borders. We have a northern border. And no one's saying
New York.
we need to build a wall on our northern border, even though when we look at the 9/11 terrorists, that's where they came in. So it's amazing how we look over or gloss over one group of people or one country of people and look at a different country or countries of people who basically are coming here for legitimate reasons, not to terrorize, not to destroy, not to. Now, again, I know we've alluded to the fact that, there are some people that come across the border who are unscrupulous, who are criminal, and that's going to happen anywhere. You had 20 criminals, 20 out of 20 criminals that crossed the northern border to, cause the terror that they did on 9/11. But that's glossed over.
Because once he finished, I have something for you. Go ahead, finish, Harold.
Okay, but that's glossed over. But I'm also reminded that, our former president also said that these people are coming and tainting the blood of our country. What in the Gehenna?
That's not creepy.
You're seeing the clear dynamics. He's drawn, lines are being drawn in the sand that are clear as to what the true focus of this whole effort is. It has nothing to do with immigration, because all of these major corporations, these major plants that are in some of those very states. Now, if Texas wants to start deporting or busing individuals, and these are now not illegal immigrants that they're busing around, these are legal immigrants. These are people they're taking out of camps, sending them to other states, but then they're not sending the federal dollars with them. So now the stress is being put on all those other states that they're sending these immigrants or documented individuals, because they have some level of documentation if they're being bused to another part of the country. So we're allowing the political games to keep being played But at some point, we as American citizens are going to have to call it out for what it really is and force Congress to do what needs to be done to address this issue.
You can have laws without enforcement, doesn't matter, right? Something I wanted to mention that you brought up, which has always been my question, and a lot of people's questions, not a lot, but people's questions about immigration, sort of when I'm getting at with the immigration is scary. Anytime I talk to someone and I say immigration, they always talk about Mexico. And that's what you just brought up. The number of illegal immigrants that come in through New York, New Jersey, and all of those places from Europe and Asia are staggering, but no one ever talks about it. We only talk about the Mexican border, Dave.
Yeah, and honestly, it's not. I would actually push back on the whole Mexico. It's the Mexican border. Those people ain't from Mexico.
True.
They're increasingly from Venezuela and other places. They've really hoofed it to get there, and in a lot of ways, with with NAFTA and the Maquiladora initiative in Mexico, Mexico's actually drug violence notwithstanding, Mexico has done a good job of improving its economy to where there isn't quite the push to go across the border that there is in Venezuela, where it's basically the worst parts of the Cold War Soviet Union, right, in line for bread, and these other places. And there are other countries that, as Cello pointed out, it's the push factor. But yes, we are focused on the southern border. We aren't looking at the other borders. And like I said, as you say, it's not even the border, right? I mean, what is this is some 19th century thing? You come in. I don't come into America across a border. I come in at an airport, and so do a lot of other people, right? And that's where a lot of folks are coming in. They haven't been identified as quite the threat. And there's perhaps a feeling, go back to what Cello said, it's under control. You come into an airport, we probably know who you are. We're probably checking, and you might be coming in on a tourist visa. You're going to overstay, right?
So we're going to ignore the Connex after Connex after Connex filled with people. The traffic.
Well, I don't know how many there are there. I would say that there are more people coming in through the airport than through Connexes.
This is true. I can agree with you with that.
Yeah, and it's the control factor. Whereas we get a few photographs from, let's say, a little town called Eagles Pass, right? Then we get more photographs like there's nothing happening here. We get but those are the images that spark the fear and are used for political purposes. Which, by the way, Harold talked about the migrants and all. Something very interesting has been happening. I think those busloads of migrants who are not, as Harold points out, not illegal, right? A lot of them have documents, right? Because they're waiting for asylum hearings or whatever. They do have status. The point, though, is that I don't know if you saw in the election for George Santos's seat, the Democrat, who himself was fairly conservative, just ran on immigration. He ran on immigration policy and owned it. And Biden, at the State of the Union, came out swinging on immigration, saying things that, frankly, Republicans would have been saying. And I think that by sending the migrants in large numbers, it kind of backfired, I think, on the people that funded that effort, in that it made Democrats genuinely care about the issue and to start being alarmed about it. So it's now it's a bipartisan concern, and of course the Democratic government, Democrats want to fix things, right? And so that's why Biden was so willing. No one asks, why was Biden all of a sudden so willing to go along with the likes of Senator Langford from frickin' Oklahoma, right? This guy is, very conservative. He basically gave every concession, right, to Republicans on the issue of immigration that they've been calling for years, and said, yeah. Now, you could say it's Ukraine aid. right? Because that was part of the bundle. But I think it's also part of this that amongst Democrats, this is becoming an issue, and Democrats are now able to move on it without, they're seeing it as a general out of control thing, and their ability to make sensible policy, we'll see. We're going to have to see if it works, but that may be a very pivotal thing in the election, that the Democrats might take over the issue and start posing their own solutions. We might actually stop kicking the can down the curb.
Right.
You think?
So comment on that. So overall, don't you think that well, we have to agree that the immigration border issue is out of control. Are we agreeing on that?
It depends on where you talk about. Are they having difficulties on the southern border? Uh, 6-year waits for. Yeah, I think on the southern border we can agree that border is out of control.
What I would
Well,
say is,
yeah,
what I
go
would
ahead.
say is it out of control, or is the current system that we have antiquated?
Both. There's a reason
Cause and
why.
effect.
Yeah, there's a reason why there's such an increase in the last 2 or 3 years of the undocumented, or you want to call it illegal immigrants, the number has increased. So that is the issue that is out of control. Again, I think we have to agree that with the exceptions, right? That we're not talking about not having immigration. We all agree the importance of immigration. I'm an immigrant myself, but even though what Kiani said about me being discriminated, I have a different view on that. Even though at that time I may have felt like that, right? But uh, what needs to happen is that there has to be some kind of control in the way immigration is. In other words, if we want to go to another country, we have to produce IDs, we have to produce documents, right? But we're saying here that we should allow people to come in, not in a way that we would go to other countries, because we are better country of opportunities. So we have to allow everybody to
No,
go in,
no, that's
and
not what we're
then and
saying.
then push the problem to somebody else or later. What do we do with all this influx? So
No,
we
that's
have to
not.
be on control of what is coming in, who is coming in, to the best of their abilities, the update the laws, update the processes, so we're more in control. Immigration to the United States is not going to be completely in control because of the opportunities. It's the best country in the world, you know. So that's what I'm saying.
No, New Zealand has something to say about that. No, I'm just kidding. Um,
Well, the thing is that I think you're right. We don't say you can come in with nothing,
right.
right? But we do have a system, like if you don't have documentation and you say, I'm a refugee, I'm fleeing political violence, you become an asylum seeker,
Unless
right?
you're Haitian.
And we don't require asylum seekers to have documents because that would be crazy, right? You're fleeing from a government. Why would you have a visa? Why would you have an identity card, right? And you probably have false papers. Right? And the thing, though, is I thought Biden had a good grasp and explanation of it. He said, look, we need to spend money. We need to expand the asylum courts so that we cut the wait time down to 6 months, because he said what's happening is people can come in, they can get asylum, and then it takes 6 years for them to get a hearing. In those 6 years, they're getting a job, they're sending money back to their family. Because, by the way, the remittance factor in Central America is when people, they say you can go around a rural village, and tell which families have relatives in America, because these folks, these guys are crazy. They come to our country, work for minimum wage, and still send money home. I love these guys for that, right? This is the manhood tested, insured. But there's that's getting to them. So 6 years of that, you know, Okay. On the other hand, if you say, well, actually, you're only going to get 6 months free living in America, especially since something that is not taught, these people pay, right? The asylum seekers, the people fleeing, they pay actual large quantities of money, thousands of dollars, right? And to get here, to do all this stuff, it wouldn't be worth it. What Biden said is, look, if we just shrink the wait times on this process, less people will come because it won't be worth it. But right now, it's worth it for 6 years of earning in America, right? Because the system is just so poor, antiquated, whatever word you want. And I thought that was the kind of thinking we need on this problem to try to actually
Yeah,
solve it.
but the problem with that, Dave, is that this is the way we look at medicine, which is my field. So, in order to uh, do something to prevent illnesses to happen, you know, we are focusing on the treatments for those illnesses. So, in other words, what I'm saying apply to immigration. It's okay to have more judges in the area to make the processes a lot faster. But before you are able to do that, so you're kind of sending the solution to a problem you're creating. So work on the problem that you're creating, trying to make not the borders to be so open. And it's clearly that what this administration is doing is let's go opposite to the previous administration, which in a way philosophically could be what they want at the end to do, but you have to be gradual. Everything, the way I look at it, that this administration has been doing, whether I agree or not, climate change, pipes, everything, economy, everything had to be radical. And it has to be a transition. It has to be
Wait,
and then
pause,
if,
pause
yeah,
for a
go ahead.
second, because
Sure.
we dispelled the pipe one with Larry,
I
so
know, I know.
we'll
I don't
admit
want to
that one.
go back, but
But yeah, we dispelled the pipe one, and sometimes because Mancello, almost I get everything you're saying because a lot of times we did an episode on things that happen during an administration, and sometimes it's radical because of a previous or previous to previous administration. But before they lose their thought, because Harold, you shook your head no, and then Dave looked like you had something to say. What was the part that you wanted to talk about that Cello just mentioned, Harold?
He mentioned so many, so many different things. I guess
that's me.
the
Yeah,
the
sorry.
way,
Okay, it's a conversation. It's okay.
but my approach has always been humanistic and holistic. Because again, at the end of the day, if we're going to fix the problem, and I think what I agree with Cello is we can't, it's like when you go into the doctor's office, you're going to tell him the symptoms of what's going on, what you're experiencing, and he's going to deal with the root cause of it when he prescribes whatever medication he's going to give you so that you'll no longer experience those symptoms. And I think, if we're really serious about addressing this issue and solving the problem, we're going to have to work with those other countries where these individuals are coming from to find out, okay, what is, if you're talking about political violence and political persecution, that's a whole nother thing. And there's no talking to another country to say, hey, listen, we're going to send them back, but don't hurt them. But when it comes to economic issues, how can we help that other country improve its economic engine to make sure it's more create opportunities in that country so those individuals can take care of their families in their native lands if that's what they want to do. Now, I don't close the door on anyone. But then
Harold,
also when we say,
you make a great
I'm sorry,
point because Hawaii a couple of years ago did I forgot what it was called. A lot of governors got annoyed with the governor of Hawaii because he implemented a plan that homeless people in Hawaii, if they wanted to go back to their city and state of origin, they would finance their ability to travel back. And a bunch of the governors were like, wait, I got my own homeless problem. Don't send them back here. And that was a way that Hawaii was dealing with their homeless problem. And so I kind of look at, I know Hawaii is a state and it's legal, but it's kind of the same concept. If you get everybody situated in Hawaii, you won't have to send or they won't have to leave. But if you're a homeless person, you want to go back to Detroit in October or January, you want to stay in Hawaii. So it may not
Right.
work for all of them. So it's kind of like that same concept.
And
But
that's
here
why I
too,
think, when you're looking at the monies that the federal dollars that are allocated for Texas for immigration to
Mhm.
deal with this whole situation, you're busing the people, but you're not sending the funding. And that's putting a stress and a strain on those other states that are receiving these individuals. So, like I said, it has to be a holistic approach and it has to be a humanistic approach internally, but we also have to work externally with those other countries. I'm sorry, I'll stop and let Marcelo finish the point.
no, I was going back to your example about going to the doctor. So let's say you go to a doctor because you have signs and symptoms. Let's say a cardiovascular disease, right? So because you've been eating badly, all right? So then the doctor gives you medication for that. But if the doctor doesn't tell you, okay, you have to prevent from this keep happening, you're going to come back again with a worse problem. And there's going to be more medicine, but it's going to get to a point that it's not going to be any more medicines and you're going to be bad. So the thing is that it's not just getting more judges, fixing the legal system. It's also creating a situation that yes, we are allowing immigration to come in, but it has to be under more control. Whether that is a wall, whether that is whatever it is, we can argue on that, but there has to be a lot more control in that regard. And
Well,
I'm not, yeah, yeah.
Dave, and then
honestly,
we'll wrap
your
up.
logic here, I have to disagree on one point here. Your metaphor, let's take your metaphor, right? It's, am I going to treat your condition or am I going to talk to you about solving the underlying problem through your behaviors? And you said that the courts would be like treating the condition and the wall would be like solving the underlying problem. And I would say it's exactly the opposite, that the wall is about whatever the incentive there is for people to get across that barrier into the country, then, but the things we're talking about doing with reforming the system of legal, reforming the system that isn't working, it had, what Biden was saying was, hey, look, it's going to have this effect that people are not going to try to come to the border because they are going to have a different expectation, right? And so I kind of feel like,
Right, right, right,
that the
right.
logic
Well,
runs that way.
here's the
But
thing with people who are trying to escape a situation. If we have learned anything through history, you can build a moat, you can build a wall, you can build a laser tower for all you want. If people want to get somewhere bad enough, it's gonna happen. So I mean,
yeah, but if you're making it harder, so then some of them will. I mean, again, it's not that
if your
they
Yeah,
want
situation
to; they
if
have
your
no other
situation
choice.
dictates,
I'm going to push back a little on Quixote on that one.
my laser tower. You didn't like my laser tower?
No, it's like, that's like, and a lot of these things of, oh well, they'll come through anyway, and there's logic to that. To, like we could say, hey, look, the airports are just as big a problem,
Mhm.
but at the same time, if you do have big areas that large numbers of people are coming through,
Yeah,
the problem with the wall wasn't the wall. The wall was a symbol. The wall,
yeah,
the wall was a metaphor.
right. Because you can
But
dig
it
under the
also
wall.
worked partly because what's wrong with building a wall if you don't control your border? There's some level at which somebody says, look, you know, eh, Cello's comment, it's like locking the door on your house. You tell me you're not going to lock the door every night to your
Yeah.
house. And so and I think that has been partly why this issue has been so good for the right, is because, it's like, oh, you're being racist about the Mexicans coming in. And it's like, well, no, there really is a problem. We do see lots of people coming through. We talk to the Border Patrol. There is a problem. We look at these issues, and so, there was always a level at which, they're illegals, right? Why aren't they following the law? There's always a level where a sensible person could take that side, right? And I think the Democrats, for a long time, that was their problem. They were pushing against an issue where there was some very, there was a level at which you could say, yeah, you really do need to control, you really do need to do these things. And now the Democrats, I think, have turned a corner where they are now engaging in the issue and engaging in solutions to the issue that is going to upend the whole policy arena and possibly the political system, or they'll screw it up because they're Democrats.
Well, we're going to wrap up, so I'm going to ask you a final question. Hey, looks like we're probably going to get Trump Biden again. So that probably means if that happens, I'm going to be on the moon until the election is over because I can't bear round 2. But so just your comments on that. Looks like it's going to be Trump Biden round 2.
Well,
Anyone?
I view it as democracy versus dictatorship. I know where I'm going.
Damn, he landed that. That was the quickest flight you've ever had.
That plane landed. That was a carrier trap, baby.
Cello?
I don't know how you call Biden a dictator. So, and that's all I have to say about that. No.
Yeah, listen, that reminds me of the Miami Hurricanes used to play football against the Notre Dame Fighting Irish during the Lou Holtz, Jimmy Johnson days, and Notre Dame came up with those Catholics versus convicts shirt. So a couple years ago, Dan Le Batard goes, Lou, it was wrong of you to print those Catholics versus convict shirts, wasn't it? Now looking back on it, and Lou Holtz goes, you know what? You're right. All of our students weren't Catholics. So, Dave.
Well,
hey, Dave, we have a comment before you say that. It says, this is the most Biden positivity from Dave ever. He's turning into a Democrat.
Well, I'm not a Democrat. First of all, I'm glad people aren't perceiving me. They used to say, oh, you just agree with everyone. I'm that old Rockefeller wing Republican, and but I am actually, this election, I am embracing my profession as a political scientist and trying to analyze things. And in other words, I'm being very boring, right? And in fact, I've got this boring AF podcast and videos.
I saw that on YouTube. Thank you for plugging it. It's boring as fuck podcast, but it does say AF.
We say AF, okay? We don't say shh.
I know, but I can say it on my show, but it does say boring as
yeah.
boring
Well,
AF,
you do. That's fair.
Boring
That's
AF podcast on
And it's
YouTube. Go
boring.
and watch it. Yeah.
And although I got to tell you, it is in this race, and there are deep concerns with the authoritarian tendencies of Trump and all. Victor Ormond is having Victor Ormond go to the CPAC and visit Mar-a-Lago should tell you it's not just made up. On the other hand, though, I don't know if it'll get there. I have to just, as a political scientist, watch the election. And Harry Enton just did some analysis this week, and Biden, he said, look, Biden is in worse shape now than he was in 2020. And Harry Enton looks at the polls and he does good analysis, right? And so when he talks, I listen. I don't agree automatically, but I look, I say, oh, what are you talking about? So it's going to be a tough fight and a tough race. And yeah, you might want to go to the moon. I'm going to go into some kind of boring zone.
Well, you call the politics boring because I know it's from a political science view, but why I encourage people to see it is because it's boring to you, but it's not to me because it's not a bunch of talking points and angles.
No.
You're actually breaking down what everybody's doing, everybody's saying why they say things, do things. So it's boring to some because it's not the dramatic political arena that we love to watch on the news. But it's a lot of deep. I love it because it dispels a lot of things when people just throw things out. Like we talked about the pipes when Larry said, Biden ruined it with the pipe thing. And you broke that thing down. It was boring, but all the information was correct on how that wasn't the Biden administration's problem when they closed the pipeline that made the gas prices go up. You showed the trail of why the gas prices go up. So if we don't have those type of podcasts, We just go with the general statements of this is what happened during this president's tenure, so they screwed it up.
If
And
you look at
nobody
the
goes,
number of views I get, you'll understand why we don't have
right,
too
we
many.
do that because that episode
Is
from
it
yours will get
important?
38 views. But if you went on there and go, Trump screwed up the pipeline or Biden screwed up the pipeline, then it's 9,000 views because that's what they don't want to do nuance and break it down. And here's another good thing. You've got to be able to change your mind when you're talking. I don't know if it was Harold or Dave that you quoted someone that's saying when they called him a liar, he said, my stance changed when the facts change. I don't remember.
John Maynard effing Keynes.
Yes.
John Maynard Keynes. That was the guy who did that.
Yeah, because a lot of politicians get called liars when they switch their stances, and they're like, well, when I get office, I get privy to more facts, and my stance changed when the facts changed. But then some presidents don't do that. You've got to stick to your guns.
So a
I know
final
Harold
comment
disagrees
on
with
that.
me on the Biden side, and I know many people will disagree with me on the Trump side. I'm just sad that we're back to this again. That's all. I'm just sad that this is the two I have to go through. But go ahead, Cello.
My comment besides the joke is that
which joke?
The country.
It was a great joke. That was one of the best jokes I heard all day.
I know. But besides that, on a more serious note.
But I missed the joke. Which joke? Which joke are you?
No, let him get to a serious point for the love of God.
Dictatorship.
Oh, yeah, that was a good joke, Cello.
Okay, but what the country really needs, let's say for the sake of the argument that what Harold is saying about Trump is somewhat true. Well, there has to be a mea culpa by the Democrats that if there is a Trump and half the country is behind him, they are the reason why there is a Trump. And it doesn't look like they're really, looking introspectively and saying, okay, well, we can bash this guy, we can run our campaigns to say how bad the guy is, but they need to fix what actually created the Trump era. And the time that the same thing with, let's say, what Biden has been doing. There are people that are going to agree, there are people that are going to disagree. But at a certain extent, the current administration and Biden has to say, okay, our beliefs are the same. The way we want to get to is the same, but we may have been a little bit too fast, too extreme. So we're learning from this. And instead of going and saying economy is great,
I'm going to let you both comment on that, and then we're going to end.
Yes. So then say, okay, we are learning from this, and this is what we're going to do. All right?
Sorry, I meant to mute myself and use the walkie-talkie, and I forgot to mute myself. But go ahead, Harold. We're both going to, not you two, I'm not. You're both going to comment on that, and then we're going to end.
I'm not. I had no further comment other than the fact that I see it as dictator versus democracy, and because it came out of his mouth, and I look at the company you keep, and if you're hanging around dictators and praising dictators, and you've conveyed that you aspire to be a dictator, you're running to become a dictator.
I remember when he first started Twitter, he used to always retweet the guy that was the president of Venezuela.
Hugo Chavez?
Yeah. Oh, that was
Maduro.
Like his best friend. I think it was. Who was the first one you said?
Hugo Chavez.
Yeah, I think that was who it was. Yeah. I just wish both of them would do. And I know people out there don't like Obama. That's great. One of the things I always praised Obama for was when he was filling his cabinet and people were getting mad because he kept filling it with people who don't agree with him. And I just thought that was a good way to go. Dave, I'm gonna wrap up with you.
I think. But Cello's got a point here. I would say it's not that the Democrats caused the problem, and that to a certain extent goes in with, the framework that the Republicans set up, but that the Democrats have failed to win. They failed. Well, Hillary Clinton definitely, and we haven't had not just the Democrats, What about the Republicans? What about the people I would vote for? Right? And what happened to Christy Todd Whitman? Where'd she go? Right? Where did John McCain go? These are people that were viable candidates from my point of view, from my family's point of view. And the point, though, is that I think it all goes back to, and this is something I'm actually working on some videos on, taking the Trump voters' motivation seriously, trying to understand what it is that makes them so worried about immigration, what makes them so willing to, that they love Trump, and why do they do what they do? And the Democrats, I feel, have failed, and and a lot of non-MAGA Republicans have failed to successfully counter it, right? And and part of it, I think, is a misdiagnosis of what's going on. Why do these people think the way they do? What are they worried about? What are their needs that the political system is failing to provide? And is there an alternative way to provide for them? The person who solves that, it may not be solvable as a problem, I don't know, but that person would win. That person would do very well. But I would say, in that sense, that is an area. I don't agree that Democrats created that situation. I think, if we look at it, we say the situation in the U.S. is the situation in the U.S. And there are problems associated with it. I think a lot of the things that Democrats didn't cause illegal immigration, for instance, right? They might not have solved the problem, but we've certainly seen that there's a lot of other things. And I think giving them control gives them way too much credit, right? But I do think he's got a point there, in that sense, that you should be trying better to understand and trying better to come up with a counter narrative.
Well, just to let you know, it was a great show today, and you just gave Cello an orgasm because you said the word misdiagnosis.